All right. You want me to do the intro?
I think we can all agree that from now on you're doing the intro.
You're the pup man.
Izzy, you want me to say you're tuning into the heart of mentoring? What's that second quote? Mentoring champions? I like champions. 3, 2, 1. What's going on, champions? Welcome to another episode of the Perspektiv podcast. And you're tuning into the heart of mentoring. Let's go!
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Perspektiv podcast. I'm Dylan.
I am Kwame Ose.
And I'm Izzy Castillo.
And this is the Perspektiv podcast.
Perspektiv on podcast. Oh my God. Do that over. Do that over.
And this is the Perspektiv podcast.
Shoot.
Welcome to the Perspektiv podcast. My name's Dylan.
I am Kwame Ose.
And I'm Izzy Castillo.
And this is the Perspektiv podcast.
All right.
Okay. So, my bad. Okay. So this is our first real episode. And today we're going to answer a few questions. We got a few questions lined up just about what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we're going to do it. So we're going to answer some random questions. We don't know what these questions are, but we're going to answer them to the best of our ability. Right, Dylan?
That's it. We got 3 anonymous questions, and I'm going to unveil it right here. I'm going to read it out, and then the 3 of us are going to have a little round table and see what we think about it.
All right. Okay, let's get to the first question. I'm going to give it a drum roll. Are you ready, Dylan?
Let's get it. Okay. How do you connect with a kid who seems too cool for you?
Ooh, too cool for school. Wow. Too cool for school.
I don't know. I don't think any kid's too cool for me, but
those were my thoughts exactly. I guess. Hey, cool is depending on your perspective. You know, depending on what you think is cool. So, I mean, I feel we all think we're cool, and somebody else might think they're cooler than us. But at the end of the day, I think it's not even about a kid that thinks he's cool. It's about you finding a way to connect with that kid. You know, whatever that kid thinks is cool, maybe you got to find a way to, you know, learn a little bit more about that and create the bridge. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I was going to say that it's very, whenever we've been in those situations, I know that always is like the first thing, like, am I too like old for this mentee relationship? But it's always about finding that connection. And I always felt like asking like what their interests were and letting them teach me what their interests or hobbies were. And then I was more of like the mentee in that scenario. So one thing that I always like to remind people about in this, my own perspective about mentoring with this scenario would be that you're also the learner in that relationship. It's not always about you're the mentor and you have nothing to learn. So in that being too cool for school situation, it's always good to scale back and just meet them where they're at.
Exactly. I think that's very important, meeting them where they're at and understand that every child is different. Like not every child is going to be the same. So your approach might work for one child where it might not work for another, but learning more about the child, learning more about what they're into will add new skills for you moving forward with other youth. You might meet another kid later on that's similar to that mentee. So just adding more tools to your toolbox, but at the same time, don't force it. I hard against forcing things. Don't force things. Try to make it more organic. You know, don't come in trying to speak their lingo because then that just sounds fake. You know, just try to meet them where they're at. And I promise you, when the child or the youth sees that you are making the effort to at least understand their perspective or understand what they're going through, they will open up, and they will, that little too cool for school thing, that shield of being too cool for school will soften, because that usually something like that is up because they're protecting something. They're like that because they're protecting something. So
Facts.
find a way to connect with them, and I promise you, they're going to open up. You're going to see the more human side of them. And Dylan, you have a good example. Remember that lady you were telling me came up to Fort McKay, and the kids all loved her, and even though she had nothing in common with them, but she got them to get into yoga. You want to tell them the story?
Yeah, man. She came up there and she was a little older than the people we usually have who run programs, and she had an accent which the kids can sometimes find funny and mock you, and she didn't miss a beat. She just came in, she rocked it, and the kids had a great time. They did yoga. They all hate yoga or think they hate yoga, right? But she made it fun because she was authentic. She was herself. Like you just said, she wasn't being fake. She wasn't trying to be someone else, and she was energized about what she was doing, and that just naturally pulls everyone else into that world. Because I found we get this a lot too, right? Like
Oh,
it's
we get it
almost like
all the
a
time. You guys are cool guys, the football guys.
yeah, exactly. You guys are cool. You work out. You did, and they think that's just like a pass for any kid. But it's like, yeah, that might work with a certain group of kids. But I've dealt with a whole bunch of kids. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like when I remember I was dealing with one girl who was transitioning. And this was a new world to me. And like Izzy just said, I was learning. I was like, okay, I got to switch my pronoun. I got to do it. Like I had to learn all this stuff, but I was learning it from him, who I formerly called her. And I'm trying to tell people like, yo, sports didn't help me in that scenario. Like being able to dunk on a 7-foot net didn't help me in that scenario. And like everything you said, you really got to scale down to everything and just be human, just be one-on-one with someone and become the learner. And that's where that connection is built. So being the cool guy doesn't always work the way people think it does.
And being like okay to be silly and goofy, because I was there for that moment, that really the one that Dylan's talking about right now. And the person uses humor and just like letting yourself be free and not caring what people think. And I was there myself, and I was learning that lesson myself in that moment. So I know that was once that like shield of like being nervous and stuff, and just using humor and being silly, and she was modeling that, I felt even myself in that scenario shift. And I think just using humor and being like okay to be silly and be embarrassed is okay.
And I think another point we could add to that, what I'd like to add to that, is also like leaning upon like other people in that kid's life, whether they're other teachers or other mentors, because maybe that child might connect more with somebody else. So that person will have maybe the backstory, to understanding why the kid is the way they are, or what's in the kid's life. Just an example, maybe the kid had a bad experience with somebody else that is similar to yourself, or understanding the verbiage. Some kids, like there's different verbiage they use. Understanding that type of stuff, will also help you get a greater understanding of what the child is going through. Yeah. Anything else?
I don't know. I think
You're
we
never
covered
too
that.
you're never too
right.
old to be cool. Let's just leave it like
Facts.
that.
Yeah.
Super facts. Let's go. All right, Dill, let's get number two. Question
All
number
right,
two.
y'all ready for number 2? We're doing a drum roll.
Drum roll, drum roll.
Okay, very relevant question in 2021. How do you maintain a relationship with a mentee during COVID season while keeping your personal social media boundaries? Whoo!
Wow. Ooh, that's deep.
Boundaries.
Yeah.
That's a big one. That's a
Mhm.
big one. Definitely in
And
the mentoring world, boundaries.
yeah, and I think it's a gray area with how social media is used to connect with kids, because I know based on what you'd read, probably Izzy, when you were taking this stuff like 10 years ago in school, there was strict policies on like giving out your personal phone numbers and this kind of stuff. But in today's day and age, there's so many different streams. The literature can't keep up with what's going on in today's society. It's already out of date. By the time they would write something to get it published in a book, to get it to the students who are taking social work, it's already changed. You know what I mean? So yeah, great question. Who wants that one? I'm gonna go ahead and say I'm not taking this because I have terrible boundaries.
I'm here for you, Dylan. I got it. Yeah, it's something to think about, especially during COVID. If you're in this line of work, you definitely had to pivot a lot, and things that were, no go, like don't have social media so accessible because what people are reaching out there past the business hours of work. So it's really like social media had to be the way right now to connect with people, because once the schools closed and all these different factors started to happen, we had social media where everyone was on to get updates, to connect with one another. So I know during that time I had to pivot and be accessible during those times with still having boundaries and being accessible during the certain time of the day, at least that. But also having that as a platform that people can connect. I know that Dylan, at your work, I see you always posting like events, where playing pool on an app, and looking at like different ways to connect online, to play games, to have art, to have writing, to go outdoors if possible, using the social distancing in a manner, but still finding a way to connect with people during this time, because we can't just leave it at like we can't use social media because it once was a thing not to do. But there's still ways to use social media with boundaries and still be able to support people. And I think that's a big one right now, that people are battling. Like, should we have it or not? Is this going to make it a situation for people? Are we crossing boundaries here? But definitely a good thing to implement. But I believe it's possible, and I know I've seen it work. I've seen it. It's been a year almost in COVID right now, right?
Yeah.
And seeing kids and youth even connect there with me even during that time, and I know that some I'd never heard like would have social media, but now they do. And so I see the importance of it, but I do believe that there needs to be boundaries to an extent, because you're showing boundaries. They when you're modeling it, they'll also respect it and know that that's the way of it. And with social media being such a 24-hour accessible thing, you can still be able to support somebody even if it's beyond the hours, by giving them resources and different resources to something that is 24 hours of a service, but you're there during that service and be able to provide what you can. But I know I've seen it, like everyone here in this group kind of reach out and pivot during those times, because everyone was kind of disconnected within a week or two, I believe, when schools were closed. So as a youth worker, we definitely had to look at those different ways to still support people.
I think definitely set your boundaries, but set your boundaries based on what your boundaries are, because like all three of us have different types of boundaries. Like for instance, like I got a young family, I got a son, so I'm making sure my son gets all of me when I'm home, versus Dylan just has cats, I don't know if he's making sure his cats get all of him, or, he can like, give a little bit more room, and what I mean? And is the same thing with you, you have a significant other. So you definitely want to allude a certain amount of time to that person, make sure they have all of you, and you're not carrying emotions and other things from your mentoring job. But I'll say this with regards to how do you stay connected. I remember when I first started teaching, my young teaching days in 2012. And I had learned through Teachers College and all this stuff, you don't want students to have your social media. A lot of teachers make up different names for Facebook or Instagram. They never really use their real name. For instance, my Facebook name, I purposely spelled my name different. I don't know if you guys ever noticed that. I purposely spelled my name different. My first name, Kwame, I just spelled it Kwame with an apostrophe after the A, and just so I wouldn't be easily accessible to students. And it got to a point where I had to reevaluate that. I ended up leaving that because I actually like the way it looks, but that's not the reason why it's like that now. But in terms of Instagram, which I was on a lot, and now even to this day I'm on it a lot. But initially I wouldn't follow kids, or I didn't want my students to have my Instagram, so I kept that a little bit of a secret, and I just kept that as my own separate life away from being Coach Kwame and Teacher Kwame and Mr. Osei or whatever. And what I found was like, well, first of all, it's hard. You can't even hide that stuff from
Small
They're
town.
they're
You're in
too
a
good
small
now.
Fort
town.
Murray. Yeah,
Yeah.
Fort Murray. You can't hide it. If once one kid finds it, that's over. That's it. And then I was very selective. Like I wouldn't follow a kid unless they graduated. Initially, I wouldn't follow a student unless they graduated. Then I started to like, okay, I'll follow my football players. Then eventually I was like, you know what? Who cares, man? Like at the end of the day, I want my social media to be representative of me, and I want my social media to be a place where anybody here can come to and find inspiration and motivation no matter what you're going through. So I felt like that was more important than, oh, you shouldn't follow any kids. No students should be on your social media. Have a private life, which is, I agree with that. Like, not many students will ever have my phone number, but I feel like with social media, social media is an opportunity for us to impact the students in our life or the youth in our life or the mentees in our life without even talking to them.
Mm-hmm.
You can just post, like Izzy, you could just post a quote on your page, a picture of a flower and have a nice caption. And that could totally impact a kid who might be going through something, that might be afraid to just message you, hey, Izzy, I'm going through this or whatever. But at that moment, they come across your page and that could just save their life. That could change your day. That could just bring some hope and some courage into their life. So I feel like that's the way you connect. Your social media, like personally, I connect through my social media. I know you two also do the same thing. And I feel like we should use that more as a tool and not like as our own personal. If you could have your own personal page also, but use that as a tool. Think about the kid. That's where they live on. All these kids live on the internet. We're in the era of social media and internet. All these kids grew up on the internet. This is all they know. We grew up playing outside and, and the internet slowly came in as we hit our teenage years. But these kids, all their whole lives, they know phones, they know computers, they know video games. This is how they connect. This is their world. So if you want to be a mentor, you got to step into the world and be accessible to them and inspire them through it. So I think that's a trick that we could all use in one way, shape, or form.
We're all
Yeah.
we're all representations. So representation is really important. I always say this because I saw, like, when I started seeing like my mentors now that are like older than me and stuff, but when I started seeing their pages and got access to like their social media, I was inspired by what I was seeing, and I was like, oh, I see myself here. And I know for me, like, I was having a shift like that of like, should I add people on my social media and all that kind of like inner battle in my own mind. But I know that mentoring isn't a job for me, it's a lifestyle. So what I
Facts.
represent
Pull
is
up. Say that again. That's a quote, man. Say that again. Let's
yeah.
go. Say it.
So mentoring is not a job, it's a lifestyle. And I've said that many times whenever I train people. I think Dylan probably heard me say this when I trained him. But yeah, it's a lifestyle. So, sometimes having that dialogue before, I was thinking, I'm like, oh, what are people going to see? But not that I had anything crazy on there. But I started realizing too that like I want to share those things on my social media, going to Pride and what kind of different things I'm part of, because when someone goes onto my page and they see that, they can reside with that and be like, oh, they represent this and they care about this and they're sending these messages out. Like still having an impact without, Carm said, like talking to people face to face. Sometimes it's just good to see something because some people just want to see it and still be impacted that way instead of having dialogue.
But how do you set what do you do? Like, how do you set the boundary? Like, I know, like,
I think like I'm very, the kids understand when my times are. So they know at 10 o'clock, my phone's on airplane mode.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a situation that demands me to keep my phone on all night, if it's an emergency situation, then they know to tell me, and then I will have my phone on and I'll be accessible for that emergency situation. But for day-to-day stuff, they know airplane mode comes on at 10 o'clock and then airplane mode comes off at 10 in the morning. So when I'm able to communicate these type of things, one, it shows them that, oh, okay, like here's a healthy social media or phone boundary that he has with himself. But then I'm also showing them that like I'm doing that with the outside world too. And you guys, like I need my me time to reset. And the more I communicate that, like they all just know it now. It's not like you didn't answer me last night. It's like, oh, I
Mhm.
gotta wait till 10 o'clock till Dill's like on his phone again. So I think it really just depends on the person, like who you are. Like some people are way more active at night. Like they want the morning to just like sleep in or do whatever. Like I'm more of a morning person, so I like to do all my stuff in the morning, and then at night I'm more active for like the kids. You know what I'm saying? But I think like in COVID, when everyone's just at home and everyone's doing their own thing, like figuring out where you are on that and figuring out how you operate best, and then trying to build that system around you, pretty much.
Mhm. So you're saying essentially like you got to establish the boundaries from the get-go, like let them know your boundaries from the get-go, or is this like a gradual thing?
The
Uh,
get-go. That's what mentoring. Like if you don't, even when you first meet a mentee and they're like, "Who are you? What are you going to see me for?" I always make it clear from the start, like, this is who I am. This is what I'm here for. This is the day I'll be coming, like laying out the path, because then they know what to expect. And then you're more like seen as a dependable person. They can rely on you during these times. Or if it's beyond that time, they know you hopefully have given something of a resource, or some sort of clarity about when you will be accessible again. So I think just always being clear about what to expect and what your role is and what your boundaries are. So then there's no confusion, or like maybe they thought you were accessible at 11, Dylan, and then you didn't answer. And then there's a little bit of a turmoil relationship there now, because maybe you may have given the idea that you were accessible 24/7, and now they can't depend on you. So being very straight up from the beginning about that, and I
Hmm.
think that would help even things down the line.
Yeah, and that was a big learning that you taught me. When you throw out phrases like, "Oh yeah, like contact me anytime, like we can chat anytime," and you just say things casually like that with good intentions, but then later it burns you when it's like, "Yo, I was trying to reach you, and you said anytime." Like, what? Oh yeah, sorry, I meant anytime, but not after 10. Like, you know.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree.
I guess one more thing that we should add on boundaries is just working in this field, especially as like a male. For me and Kwame, like there is certain aspects of that where you want to cover your own butt. And can we swear on this podcast? I almost said, hey, I guess it's ours. We can do what we
It's
want.
your world, bro.
It's true. It's your perspective.
Facts.
um, yeah, but just knowing the social media platforms and having an understanding of how those work. For instance, on Instagram, you can remove messages. On Snapchat, messages delete. So that can be a scary world if you're maybe dealing with a young person who you don't know that well, or you're not comfortable around. So for me, I stick to Facebook Messenger with any young person that because I do have a lot of people from the community or just in general who kind of message me. So I always stick to Facebook Messenger if it's someone who I don't really know, because Facebook allows that stream of messages to always be there. Like they can delete it from their end, but it doesn't delete from your end. So just little things like that. And again, those aren't situations that we ideally want to like think about, but it's always something that's in your head when you're dealing with someone that you're not really like sure about who they are, or what
Hmm.
where they're coming from. So just being able to cover your own butt in that way to if they took something out of context, or because I've seen this happen with someone I was training with on Snapchat, where he responded to a message to a kid and they took it the wrong way, and he tried to explain himself, but at this point both messages were gone. So it's a little bit of a it was on Snapchat, so it
Hmm.
turns into a he said she said, and then it's just a bad situation. And if you can keep that, so you can always refer back to him and be like, oh hey, like this is what I meant, like look at it right here, then it just saves everyone the grief. And that's kind of a dark, scary road that is a possibility when you work in this field. So I just like to keep that always in the light. Like I don't talk to anyone. I barely use Snapchat at all, to be honest, just because all that goes away and I don't want,
Hmm.
So yeah, like that's something that, and again, new stuff's coming out all the time. Like, you know, um we got TikTok, we got like it's always something new. So just being aware of how that messaging stream works, you know, as a responsible adult, I think it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, no, that's big. Yo, I didn't even think about that. Like, now I'm gonna implement that. Like, I didn't even think about like somebody could erase messages and create like their own like conversation based
Yeah.
on like what they want to see. Whoa, yo, y'all take notes. Take notes. It's a scary world, man. It's a scary world, but you know what?
Yeah.
At the same time, you know, just it's our duty to continue to create these relationships, but we just got to be careful.
Facts.
All right, do we have a third question?
Last
We're at
question.
26 minutes, by the way.
Oh,
Yeah.
do you want to cut it?
Let's not drop all the gems so early.
Facts,
Yeah. What the heck is juice, bruv?
What the heck is juice? Y'all taking that in?
All right, well, that's it for this week's episode. Remember, there's not one way to mentor. This is just our perspective. What's yours? See you next week. Do you want to say it real quick? Sum it up like super quick. Be like, send in your questions to the email, and I'll be like, send in your questions. Izzy be like, send in your questions, and then I'll use that.
Okay. If you have any questions that you would like us to answer, please send it into our email, info@perspektifonmentoring.com, or hit us up on our individual IGs, you know our IGs, and then we'll answer them on the show.
Let's go. Join the conversation. Send in your questions now.
I don't know. I feel like that's enough. The three people us saying
Okay. All right, we good then?
Yeah.
Okay, so stop recording. 1, 2, 3 now. Well, I guess it doesn't matter when we start.